The scent of incense and fear hung in the air like a veil, clinging to every surface of the preparation chamber. Outside, rain pattered against the stained glass windows, casting fractured rainbows across the stone floor where I knelt. My pale hair had been brushed until it shone like moonlight, falling in waves down my back. The only part of me I'd ever been told was beautiful. The rest of me was too thin, too angular, too marked. "Hold still," the matron hissed, pulling the ceremonial robe tighter around my shoulders. "You should be grateful anyone would take you at all." I bit my lip and tasted blood. Grateful. That word had been thrown at me since childhood, as if my very existence demanded gratitude. Be grateful we didn't leave you to die. Be grateful you have food. Be grateful someone might accept you, despite your face. My fingers found the small wooden pendant hanging at my neck, my mother's last gift before she passed. A simple carving of a wolf with its head thrown back in silent howl. "Strength isn't always a roar," she'd whispered as she placed it in my palm. Sometimes it's a whisper that outlasts the storm. I'd never understood what she meant until I stood among the other girls at the academy, watching them be chosen one by one while I remained. The bride selection was an ancient tradition, a remnant from before the Great War when humans and shifters had forged their uneasy alliance. Each year, human families offered daughters to strengthen bloodlines, to cement peace. The most beautiful were chosen by wealthy shifter nobles, the accomplished by respected warriors, the charismatic by influential politicians. And then there were the leftovers, the girls with flaws, with histories, with secrets etched into their skin. Girls like me. "Remember to keep your eyes down," the matron continued, adjusting my veil. "Speak only when spoken to, and for goddess' sake, don't let him see, well, not until after the ceremony at least." A knock echoed through the chamber, and the academy headmistress entered, her face an unreadable mask of politeness. "It's time. The carriages are prepared." My heart hammered against my ribs. I'd known this day would come, had dreaded it for years, but nothing prepared me for the reality of being sold to a stranger. The other girls had been chosen at the grand selection, paraded before potential suitors in the capital like prized livestock. But not me. I'd been kept hidden, a shameful secret, until word came that the Alpha King of the Northern Territories sought a bride. Not in person. He'd simply sent his advisor with a bag of gold. For the unclaimed bride, sight unseen, for me. "Why would he choose me?" I'd asked the headmistress when she told me, unable to keep the suspicion from my voice. "He hasn't even seen me. The king has his reasons," she'd replied cryptically. "Perhaps he values something beyond beauty." But I wasn't naive. In my 22 years, I'd learned that kindness always had a price, and mysterious offers from powerful men even more so. The carriage journey was endless, winding through mist-shrouded forests and over mountain passes. My companions, 2 stern-faced guards and an older woman who introduced herself as Lady Eleanor, the king's distant cousin, offered little conversation. Eleanor occasionally glanced at me with something like pity in her eyes. "Has he had many wives?" I finally asked, breaking 3 days of silence. Eleanor's lips thinned. "None. You will be his first." "And why would an Alpha King, who could have anyone, choose a bride he's never seen?" She turned to the window, watching the landscape blur into darkness. "King Nathaniel is not like other kings, not like other alphas. His priorities are different." "You mean he needs an alliance with humans?" I guessed. "He needs many things," she answered carefully. "A queen, an heir, stability for his kingdom, a sacrifice," I added bitterly. For the first time, Eleanor's expression softened. "In this world, we are all sacrifices to something. The lucky ones get to choose what altar they bleed upon." On the 7th day, we arrived at the capital of the Northern Territories. Unlike the gleaming marble of the human cities, Blackcrest was carved into the mountain itself, a fortress of dark stone and ancient timber. Waterfalls cascaded alongside the main road, powering massive wooden wheels that disappeared into the cliff face. Steam rose from vents in the street, warming the perpetually cold mountain air. People stopped to watch our carriage pass, shifters mostly, with their imposing height and predatory grace, but humans too, moving through the market stalls and workshops. I glimpsed children playing, shifter and human together, something I'd never seen in the strictly segregated human cities. "The wedding will be tonight," Eleanor informed me, as the carriage climbed toward the looming palace. "The king does not believe in prolonging formalities," my stomach twisted. "Tonight? But I haven't even met him." "You will meet him at the altar. It's tradition." "Whose tradition?" I challenged, surprising myself with my boldness. Eleanor's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "His. And I would advise you not to question it openly. The king's word is absolute here." The palace servants whisked me into another preparation chamber, this one warm and luxurious, with furs lining the walls and a roaring fire in the hearth. They bathed me, dressed me in layers of white silk and silver embroidery, and brushed my pale hair until it gleamed. Through it all, my veil remained in place, hiding what lay beneath. No one had seen my face since my arrival. Not the servants, not Eleanor, not the curious courtiers I'd glimpsed watching from shadowed doorways. I wondered if rumors had already spread about the king's mysterious human bride. I wondered what they would say tomorrow, after he had seen what he had purchased. As twilight descended, I was led through torchlit corridors to the great hall. Music drifted from beyond massive wooden doors carved with scenes of wolves running beneath a full moon. 2 guards stood at attention, their eyes glowing amber in the firelight, shifters in human form, but only just. "Ready, my lady?" asked a young servant girl, the only one who had shown me any kindness since my arrival. I clutched my mother's pendant beneath my robes. "Does it matter if I'm not?" She bit her lip, then whispered, "The king is a good man, harsh sometimes, but fair. He would not harm you." Before I could respond, the doors swung open, the music swelled, and hundreds of eyes turned to where I stood, a small white figure against the darkness of the corridor. The great hall stretched before me, ceiling lost in shadow, walls lined with burning torches and grim-faced nobles. At the far end, upon a dais of dark stone, stood a throne carved from a single massive piece of obsidian, and upon it sat the man who had bought me. Even from a distance, King Nathaniel dominated the room. He was impossibly tall, broad-shouldered, with skin tanned by northern winds and hair as black as midnight. He wore no crown, only a simple circlet of silver, yet no one could mistake him for anything but what he was. Alpha. Predator. King. As I took my first step into the hall, his head lifted. Though I couldn't see his eyes clearly from this distance, I felt his gaze like a physical touch, assessing, weighing, judging. I forced myself to keep walking, one foot before the other, clutching a bouquet of winter roses so tightly the thorns bit into my palms. The whispers followed me down the aisle. The human bride. Didn't even see her. Why would he choose? They say she's... I kept my eyes fixed on the steps of the dais, counting each one to keep from fleeing. 17 steps. 17 steps between me and my future. Between hiding and being seen. Between the girl I had been and the queen I was meant to become. At the foot of the dais, I finally dared to look up. King Nathaniel had risen from his throne, towering over the officiator, a small, wizened man with hands that trembled as he held the ancient text. Up close, the king was even more intimidating. His features sharp and aristocratic, his posture rigid with authority. But it was his eyes that caught me, held me, robbed me of breath. They were wolf's eyes, not amber like his guards, but a startling silver gray like the heart of a winter storm. And they were fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin prickle with awareness. "Approach!" the officiator called, his voice surprisingly strong. I climbed the steps on trembling legs, stopping one step below the king, as tradition demanded. Even so, I had to tilt my head back to look at him through my veil. The ceremony passed in a blur of ancient words and solemn vows. I spoke when prompted, my voice small in the cavernous hall. The king's responses were deep and unwavering, spoken with the confidence of absolute power. When the time came to exchange blood, another ancient tradition, symbolizing the mingling of human and shifter, He took my hand in his. His skin burned against mine, as if a fire raged beneath the surface. "With this bond," the officiator intoned, "two become one. Human and shifter, bride and alpha, united under the witness of the moon." Then came the words I had dreaded most. "You may now look upon your mate." The king's hands rose, hovering at the edges of my veil. The hall fell silent, hundreds holding their breath. I closed my eyes, unable to watch his face when he saw what he had purchased. The veil lifted. Cool air kissed my exposed skin. I heard the collective gasp of the assembly, felt the king's hands go still, and then, forcing every ounce of courage I possessed, I opened my eyes. King Nathaniel was staring at me, his silver eyes wide, his expression frozen in shock. His gaze traced the pattern of scars that marred the left side of my face, jagged lines that ran from temple to jaw, puckered and white against my pale skin. The mark of a wolf attack I had survived as a child, the reason I had been hidden away, considered unmarriageable, unlovable, unwanted. I waited for the disgust, the anger, the regret. Instead, the king did something that shocked everyone in the hall, most of all me. He smiled. It transformed his severe features, softened the hard lines of his face, made him suddenly, startlingly handsome, and in his eyes, I saw not revulsion, but recognition. "At last," he whispered, so softly that only I could hear. The prophecy was true. Before I could ask what he meant, he leaned down and pressed his lips to mine, sealing our union before the kingdom. His kiss was gentle, almost reverent, nothing like the claiming I had expected from an alpha king. When he pulled away, his eyes held a promise I couldn't decipher, and the strangest feeling washed over me. That perhaps in this foreign land, among these dangerous people, I had finally found something I'd never had before, a place where I belonged. As the king took my hand and turned us to face the assembly, I caught sight of Lady Eleanor watching from the front row. She was smiling through tears, nodding as if confirming something she had long suspected, and just beyond her, partially hidden in shadow, stood a figure in a dark cloak. Observing with unnatural stillness, the figure raised a hand in what might have been blessing or warning, and I felt a chill race down my spine. The king's grip on my hand tightened, as if he too had seen the mysterious observer. "Come," he murmured as the assembly rose in thunderous applause. "There is much we need to discuss, my queen." And as he led me from the hall, I realized that my journey hadn't ended with this ceremony. It had only just begun. The king led me through a labyrinth of corridors, his hand still firmly clasping mine. Guards stood at attention as we passed, their eyes dropping respectfully, though I caught flashes of curiosity in their sidelong glances. The whispers would spread quickly now. The human queen with the scarred face, the bride no one wanted, chosen by the Alpha King himself. We stopped before an ornate door carved with intertwining wolves. With a gesture from Nathaniel, the guards stationed there bowed and retreated, leaving us alone in the torchlit hallway. "These are my private chambers," he explained, his deep voice resonating in the empty corridor. "They are now yours as well." I swallowed hard, suddenly aware of what traditionally followed a royal wedding, the consummation, the claiming. My hands trembled slightly and he noticed, his silver eyes narrowing. "You're afraid of me," he stated. Not a question, but an observation. "I don't know you," I answered honestly. "And you are very powerful here." A shadow of something, regret, perhaps, crossed his face. "Power does not equate to cruelty, though I understand why you might think so." He pushed the door open. "Please enter. We have much to discuss, and these halls have too many ears." The royal chambers were vast and unexpectedly warm, with a massive hearth dominating one wall and thick furs covering the stone floors. Bookshelves lined another wall, filled with leather-bound volumes. A large desk stood near the windows that overlooked the moonlit mountains. And yes, there was a bed, enormous and canopied, but he led me past it to a sitting area near the fire. "Wine?" he offered, gesturing to a carafe. I shook my head. "I need clarity tonight more than comfort." That earned me another of those transformative smiles. "Wise, please, sit." I perched on the edge of a chair, still wearing my wedding finery, the heavy ceremonial robes making me feel even smaller in the vast room. Nathaniel removed his formal cloak and draped it over a chair before taking a seat opposite me. Without the added bulk, he looked younger, though no less intimidating. "You mentioned a prophecy," I said, deciding directness was my best approach. "At the ceremony, when you saw my face." He studied me for a long moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. "Yes, there is an ancient prophecy among my people. It speaks of an alpha who will unite the fractured territories under one rule, bringing lasting peace between humans and shifters." He paused. "This alpha's mate would bear the mark of his greatest enemy and his greatest strength." My hand rose unconsciously to the scars on my face. "A wolf attack. Not just any wolf," he said quietly. "My father." The revelation struck me like a physical blow. "Your father?" Nathaniel leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. 15 years ago, my father, King Alaric, was in your lands for a diplomatic mission. There was an incident. He lost control of his wolf form during a full moon and attacked a human settlement before his guards could subdue him. One child was injured but survived." His eyes locked with mine. "You." Memories flooded back. The harvest festival, the moonlight, the massive silver wolf appearing at the edge of the forest. The screams, the pain, the blood. "They told me it was a rogue wolf," I whispered. "A wild animal. They lied to prevent war. My father paid handsomely for that silence, and for your care." Bitterness edged his voice. It was his greatest shame, the incident that ultimately led to his downfall. "You knew who I was all along," I realized, a cold clarity settling over me. "When you sent for me, when you bought me sight unseen, I suspected," he corrected. "When my father died last winter, I found his private journals. He wrote of the child he had marked, of his fear that the prophecy was being fulfilled through his own actions." Nathaniel ran a hand through his dark hair, a surprisingly human gesture. "I've spent months searching for you. The unclaimed bride with the wolf scars. When I finally located you at that academy, I knew I had to act quickly, before anyone else could connect the same pieces." I stood abruptly, needing to put distance between us. "So this marriage is just political maneuvering, fulfilling some convenient prophecy?" He rose as well, his height making the room seem suddenly smaller. "No. The prophecy was my starting point, yes, but there is more at stake now." "What more could there possibly be?" "War," he said simply. "The border territories are restless. The southern pacts grow bold, challenging my rule. The human councils speak of breaking treaties, of reclaiming lands. There are those who would use any weakness, any hesitation on my part, as an opportunity to strike." I turned to the windows, gazing out at the moonlit peaks. "And a human queen makes you look progressive? Sympathetic to human concerns? A human queen makes me look exactly as I am, committed to peace between our peoples." He moved closer, not touching me but near enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "The prophecy gave me a direction. But I chose you because I need someone strong at my side. Someone who survived what should have killed her. Someone marked, but unbroken." His words stirred something in me, a longing to believe, to trust. But years of learned caution couldn't be dismissed so easily. "And if I don't want this role, this destiny you've chosen for me? Then say the word, and I will have you escorted back to your lands with wealth enough to live comfortably, far from any academy that would sell you to the highest bidder." His voice was steady, but when I turned to face him, I caught a flash of something in his eyes. Fear, perhaps, but I hope you'll stay, at least long enough to see if what I offer is better than what you left behind. I considered his words, weighing them against what I knew of the world. In the human lands, I was damaged goods, hidden away and unwanted. Here, I was queen, with power and position, if not love. "What exactly are you offering me, Nathaniel?" "A partnership," he said without hesitation. "Respect, protection. I will not force affection, but I believe it can grow between compatible souls, given time and trust." "And the physical aspects of marriage?" I forced myself to ask, heat rising to my cheeks. To my surprise, he stepped back, giving me more space. "Nothing will happen without your consent. You have my word as alpha and king. Something uncoiled inside me, a tension I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Then I will stay. For now. Relief washed over his face, quickly masked by regal composure. Thank you. He moved to a door I hadn't noticed before, opening it to reveal an adjoining chamber. These will be your private rooms. Mine connect on the other side. The middle chamber we share for appearances, but you will always have your own space. The consideration startled me. I had expected to be claimed, possessed, not respected. Thank you, I echoed, unsure what else to say. A knock at the main door interrupted the moment. Nathaniel tensed, then called, "Enter." Lady Eleanor stepped in, her eyes finding mine immediately. "Forgive the intrusion, your majesties, but there's a situation that requires attention." Nathaniel frowned. "What situation?" "Lord Dominic has arrived with his entourage. He's demanding an audience." The king's expression darkened. "At this hour? On my wedding night?" "He claims it cannot wait. He speaks of border incursions, of humans crossing into shifter territories with weapons." I watched as Nathaniel transformed before my eyes, the considerate man replaced by the Alpha King, his posture straightening, his jaw tightening. "Very well. I will meet him in the council chamber." He turned to me. "You should rest. It's been a long day." "No," I said, surprising myself as much as him. "If I am to be queen, I should be present for such discussions, especially when they involve my people." Eleanor's eyes widened, but Nathaniel studied me thoughtfully. "It could be unpleasant. Lord Dominic is not known for his diplomatic nature." "Neither am I," I replied, lifting my chin. "And if human actions are being discussed, you may need a human perspective." A slow smile spread across his face. "Indeed." He offered me his arm. "Come then, my queen. Let us face our first challenge together." The council chamber was smaller than I expected, dominated by a round table of polished black wood. A dozen men and women rose as we entered, their eyes lingering on my scars before dropping in deference. All except one, a tall, lean man with hard eyes and a scar of his own, bisecting his right eyebrow. "Lord Dominic," Nathaniel acknowledged coolly, "you've interrupted royal celebrations to bring urgent news. It had better be worthy of such an entrance." Dominic's gaze slid to me, his lip curling slightly. "I see the rumors are true. You've taken a human bride." He made no attempt to hide his disdain. "How progressive of you, your majesty. You will address your queen with respect," Nathaniel warned, his voice dropping to a dangerous register that raised the hair on my arms. "Or you will not address her at all." The tension in the room thickened, the other council members shifting uncomfortably. I placed a gentle hand on Nathaniel's arm, feeling the coiled strength beneath the fabric of his shirt. "Lord Dominic," I said, keeping my voice even. "I understand you bring news of my countrymen causing trouble. I would hear these accusations directly, if you please." Surprise flickered across Dominic's face, quickly masked by practiced indifference. 3 hunting parties crossed our southern borders this week. They carried silver weapons and wolfsbane. When challenged by our patrols, they claimed to be hunting wild game, but no hunting party needs such specific armaments, unless their target is shifter. "Were they apprehended?" Nathaniel asked. 2 groups retreated back across the border. The third. Dominic's eyes hardened. There was resistance. Blood was spilled. My heart sank. "Human blood?" "And shifter," Dominic snapped. 2 of my best scouts are fighting for their lives as we speak. Nathaniel's hand covered mine where it still rested on his arm, a subtle gesture of support. "This is troubling news, but not yet cause for escalation. I will send envoys to the Human Council at first light, demanding an explanation." "Explanations won't heal my men," Dominic growled. "We should send a stronger message, remind the humans why they feared us for centuries." "That approach leads only to more bloodshed," I interjected, earning glares from several council members. "The Human Council won't respond well to threats. They'll see it as confirmation of what many already believe, that shifters are dangerous, unpredictable." "And are we not?" Dominic challenged. "You are," I acknowledged, "as are humans with their weapons and numbers, which is precisely why neither side can afford to provoke the other." Nathaniel squeezed my hand gently before releasing it. The Queen speaks wisdom. We will investigate these incursions thoroughly before taking action. His tone left no room for argument. In the meantime, double the patrols along the southern border, but with explicit orders. Observe and report only. No engagement unless directly threatened. Dominic's jaw tightened, but he bowed stiffly. As you command, my king. As the council dispersed, I caught whispers, quickly hushed as nobles passed us. Scarred but not stupid. Still human. Can't be trusted. Prophecy or not, the king needs a proper mate. Nathaniel seemed deaf to these murmurs, but I stored them away, mapping the invisible lines of alliance and opposition in this new world I'd entered. By morning, everyone in the kingdom would know of the human queen with the scarred face. By nightfall, they would be taking sides. As we returned to our chambers, Nathaniel remained silent, his expression troubled. At our door, he finally spoke. You did well tonight. Did I? Your council seems unconvinced. My council is set in old ways. They need time to adjust. He hesitated. What you said about the human council, you know their workings? I nodded. I was raised at court until my accident. My father served as an advisor before his death. Interest sparked in his silver eyes. Then you have knowledge that could be valuable. Connections, perhaps. Few remember me kindly, I admitted. But I remember everything about them. Their strengths, their weaknesses, their secrets. For the first time since the ceremony, I saw genuine hope in his expression. Then perhaps this alliance is even more fortuitous than prophecy suggested. He bowed slightly. Rest well, my queen. Tomorrow, your real work begins. As I entered my new chambers, I touched the wooden pendant at my neck. Strength isn't always a roar, my mother had said. Sometimes it's a whisper that outlasts the storm. Perhaps, just perhaps, I had found a place where my particular kind of strength might matter after all. Morning arrived with a soft knock at my door. I'd slept fitfully, dreams filled with silver wolves and whispered prophecies. When I opened the door, I found a young woman waiting, hands clasped before her, eyes carefully averted from my scarred face. Good morning, Your Majesty. I'm Lydia, assigned to be your lady's maid. Her voice trembled slightly. The king requested I help you prepare for the day. I studied her, petite, with auburn hair and freckled skin, human, not shifter, which explained why Nathaniel had chosen her. A small kindness, ensuring I'd have at least one familiar element in this foreign court. Thank you, Lydia. Please come in. She moved efficiently around the room, opening curtains to reveal a stunning view of snow-capped mountains bathed in dawn light. My chambers were more beautiful than I'd appreciated in the dim evening light. Walls lined with tapestries depicting forest scenes, furniture carved from pale wood, and a private bath steaming behind a decorative screen. His Majesty has arranged for a new wardrobe, Lydia explained, opening a massive armoire, but he thought you might prefer simpler attire until you've settled. Inside hung gowns of various styles, some elaborate and formal, others practical, but still finely made. All cut to emphasize strength rather than fragility, in rich colors that complemented my pale coloring. He chose these himself? I asked, surprised. Lydia's lips twitched, almost a smile. With some guidance from Lady Eleanor. The king is not known for his fashion expertise. I selected a deep blue gown with silver embroidery, simple enough for day wear, but befitting a queen. As Lydia helped me dress, I caught her stealing glances at my scars. You can ask, I said quietly. I'd rather curiosity than fear. She blushed deeply. Forgive me, Your Majesty. I didn't mean to stare. But you have questions. Everyone does. Lydia's hands stilled as she fastened the last button. They say a wolf attacked you, that you survived when no one else would have. I was lucky, I replied, though luck had nothing to do with my survival. The wolf was driven off before it could finish. What I didn't tell her was the strange memory that had haunted me for 15 years, how the massive silver wolf had suddenly stopped its attack, its eyes shifting from feral rage to something almost like horror. How it had backed away, whining, before the village men arrived with torches and pitchforks. How it had seemed to look at me one last time, as if in apology, before disappearing into the forest. Now I understood why. The wolf had been Nathaniel's father. An alpha king who had somehow broken through his bloodlust long enough to stop himself from killing a child. "There's something else," Lydia said hesitantly, as she arranged my hair, leaving it mostly down but braiding the front sections away from my face. "Something the servants are saying. About me? About the king. They say he hasn't shifted since his father died. Almost a year now." She lowered her voice. "It's unheard of for an alpha to deny his wolf for so long. Some whisper it's why the southern territories grow bold. They sense weakness." I absorbed this information, adding it to my growing understanding of the complex man I'd married. "And now?" "Now he's married a human bride marked by wolf claws." Lydia secured the last braid with a silver pin. "The symbolism hasn't escaped notice." Before I could ask more, another knock came at the door. This time it was Eleanor, regal in deep green, her silver-streaked hair elaborately styled. "Good morning, Your Majesty. The king awaits you in the morning chamber." Her appraising gaze took in my appearance. "You look lovely. Blue suits you." I followed her through the palace, noting how servants and nobles alike stopped to stare as we passed. Some bowed respectfully, others merely inclined their heads, the minimum deference required. I kept my chin high, my scarred side deliberately unhidden. If I was to be their queen, they would see all of me, not just the parts that pleased them. The morning chamber was smaller than the great hall, with a wall of windows overlooking the city below. Nathaniel stood at the center of a group of advisors, his powerful frame draped in dark blue that nearly matched my gown. When he saw me, he dismissed them with a gesture, extending a hand in welcome. "You slept well?" he inquired, though the shadows beneath my eyes likely answered for me. "Well enough for a first night in a strange place," I replied diplomatically. His lips quirked. "Diplomatic even in private. You'll make an excellent queen." He guided me to a table laden with breakfast, fruits, breads, and meats arranged artfully on silver platters. "Eat. We have a full day ahead." As we broke our fast, he outlined what awaited us: a tour of the palace, meetings with key nobles, a public appearance in the city square. "The people need to see their new queen," he explained, "especially now, with tensions rising." I sipped from a goblet of sweet juice. "Has there been word from the Human Council?" "Not yet. My envoys likely only just arrived." He selected an apple, slicing it with precise movements of a silver knife. "But there's been another incident at the border. No bloodshed this time, but close. Lord Dominic will use this to push for retaliation," I observed. Nathaniel's silver eyes met mine. "Yes, which is why we need to present a united front. A strong king and queen, human and shifter in harmony. A pretty illusion," I murmured. "All power begins as illusion," he countered, "until belief makes it real." After breakfast, he offered me his arm, and we began the promised tour. The palace was a marvel of ancient stone and modern ingenuity. Parts carved directly from the mountain, others added over centuries. Servants scurried about their duties, bowing as we passed. Guards stood at attention, their eyes glowing amber when they looked at Nathaniel, a sign of submission to their alpha. "The East Wing houses the military quarters," Nathaniel explained, as we walked a covered bridge between towers. "The West is for diplomacy and state functions. The central keep, where our chambers are located, is the oldest part, dating back to the first shifter settlements." "And below?" I asked, noting the occasional steam vents in the courtyards. "Hot springs. They warm the palace and provide power for our forges." Pride colored his voice. "My grandfather designed the system." Before that, winters here were brutal. As we descended to the main courtyard, I noticed a stone circle in its center, the ground worn smooth. "What happens there?" Nathaniel's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Challenge circles, where matters of dominance are settled." "Through combat?" "Sometimes." He steered me toward a different path, though I prefer to avoid such displays when possible. We had nearly reached the palace gates when a commotion erupted ahead. Raised voices, the clatter of weapons. Nathaniel's guards immediately moved to surround us, but he waved them back, striding forward to investigate. In the entrance courtyard, A group of shifters in leather armor surrounded a single human man, who knelt on the cobblestones, blood streaming from his nose. One of the shifters, a tall woman with a captain's insignia, stood over him, her hand on her sword hilt. "What is the meaning of this?" Nathaniel demanded, his voice carrying the unmistakable command of an alpha. The captain turned, bowing quickly. "Your Majesty, we caught this human trying to enter the palace with concealed weapons." She kicked a small pouch that lay open on the ground, revealing several silver daggers. When questioned, he attacked. My blood ran cold as I recognized the man through his bloodied features. Thomas Reed, a minor lord's son from my homeland, known for his temper and ambition. And more importantly, someone who would certainly recognize me. "I have diplomatic immunity," Thomas spat, his eyes finding mine with a flash of shock. "I carry a message from the Human Council." "Diplomatic messengers use the main gate and declare their weapons," the captain countered. This one scaled the east wall and had a map of the royal chambers. Nathaniel's posture shifted subtly, power radiating from him like heat from a flame. "Search him thoroughly, then bring him to the interrogation chambers." "Wait," I said, stepping forward before I could reconsider. All eyes turned to me, including Thomas's, which narrowed with recognition and disgust. "So the rumors are true," he sneered. "The scarred witch has become queen of beasts." One of the guards struck him, but I raised a hand. "Stop." I turned to Nathaniel, lowering my voice. "I know this man. He's from my homeland, son of Lord Reed. Dangerous but connected. Killing him would provoke exactly the response Lord Dominic desires." Nathaniel studied me, then nodded slightly. "Take him to the secure guest chambers. Post guards. Search him thoroughly, but treat him as befits his rank." His voice dropped to a growl, "for now." As the guards dragged Thomas away, he called out, "The council knows what you are, scarred one. They know what you've done." My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral, until we were alone in a side corridor. Nathaniel turned to me immediately, concern etched across his features. "What was that about? What does he mean? What you've done?" I leaned against the cool stone wall, suddenly lightheaded. Before I was sent to the academy, I worked in the council archives. I had access to sensitive documents, including some regarding shifter-human treaties. And I discovered evidence that some council members were systematically violating those treaties, selling hunting permits for shifter territories, authorizing secret military outposts along the borders. I met his gaze. When I brought this to the head archivist's attention, I was promptly sent away, to be forgotten. Understanding dawned in Nathaniel's eyes. Or silenced. The academy was a prison disguised as a school, I confirmed. And now I've escaped, and married the very king they were plotting against. Nathaniel's expression hardened. This changes things. If Thomas was sent as an assassin rather than a messenger, then the Human Council has already decided on war. I finished grimly. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture I was beginning to recognize as a sign of deep thought. "We need more information before we act." "I'll question the prisoner myself." "Let me speak to him first," I suggested. "He might reveal more to a familiar face, especially one he underestimates." Nathaniel hesitated, protective instinct warring with tactical sense. Finally he nodded. "Together, then. But at the first sign of danger, you'll protect me." I finished with a small smile. "I know." Something shifted in his silver eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or the beginnings of trust. He offered me his arm again, and we continued our tour, though both of us were now preoccupied with this new development. The public appearance in the city square was a tense affair. Hundreds gathered to see their new queen, a mix of curious excitement and wary suspicion on their faces. I stood beside Nathaniel on a raised platform, the sun highlighting my scars for all to see. He spoke of unity and strength, of the historic bond our marriage represented. When he took my hand and raised it, declaring me Queen of the Northern Territories, the crowd's response was mixed, cheers from some, particularly the humans among them, and reserved applause from others. As we turned to leave, an object sailed through the air, narrowly missing my head, a rock, wrapped in cloth. Guards immediately surrounded us, escorting us back to the waiting carriage, while others moved through the crowd seeking the culprit. Inside the carriage, Nathaniel unwrapped the cloth from the stone, revealing a message written in dried blood. "Death to traitors. The moon remembers. Moon cultists," he muttered, crumpling the cloth. "Extremists who believe shifters should reclaim their ancestral hunting grounds, including human settlements. So I face threats from both sides," I observed with grim humor. "Humans who see me as a traitor, shifters who see me as an invader." "No," Nathaniel said firmly, taking my hand. His touch was warm, steadying. "You face these threats with me beside you. We stand together, or not at all." The sincerity in his voice touched something in me, a long-dormant hope that perhaps I wasn't destined to face the world alone. I squeezed his hand in return, a silent acknowledgement of our shared path. Back at the palace, we found Eleanor waiting with news. The envoys had returned from the human territories with the council's formal response. Her expression suggested the news wasn't good. "They deny any knowledge of armed incursions," she reported as we entered the private council chamber. "They claim our patrols must have encountered independent hunters who strayed off course." "Convenient," Nathaniel growled. "There's more," Eleanor continued. "They've requested verification that their ward, by which they mean you, my queen, is being treated well and has not been coerced." I laughed bitterly. "After they sold me like livestock?" "They claim the marriage arrangement was made without their knowledge or approval." Eleanor's eyes held sympathy. "They demand an audience with you, alone, to confirm your well-being. A trap," Nathaniel stated flatly. "They want to separate us, perhaps extract you." I paced the chamber, mind racing. "Or assassinate me to prevent what I know from coming to light." I turned to them both. "Either way, this confirms Thomas Reed wasn't acting alone." The council sent him. Whether as messenger, assassin, or would-be rescuer remains to be seen. Nathaniel moved to the window, his powerful frame silhouetted against the afternoon light. "We need to question him immediately." As if summoned by his words, a guard burst into the chamber, breathing hard. "Your Majesties, the prisoner." "What about him?" Nathaniel demanded. "He's dead, sire. Poison hidden in his boot. He bit into it when the guards changed shifts." The implications hung heavy in the air. Thomas had been silenced, not by us, but by whoever had sent him, someone who couldn't risk what he might reveal under questioning. War no longer loomed on the horizon. It was already here, moving in shadows, claiming its first victims, and I stood at its center, a scarred human queen in a kingdom of wolves. 3 days after Thomas Reed's death, the palace was transformed into a fortress. Guards patrolled every corridor. Shifters in both human and wolf form prowled the perimeter, and no one entered or left without thorough scrutiny. Nathaniel had postponed our formal coronation ceremony indefinitely, a public acknowledgement of the growing crisis. I spent these days poring over maps and documents in the royal library, searching for patterns in the border incidents, connections to the Human Council's movements. My background in the archives proved unexpectedly valuable. I understood the bureaucratic language that concealed the council's true intentions, could recognize the signature policies of specific councilors. "Lord Hargrove," I told Nathaniel as we convened with his inner circle late in the afternoon. "He's behind this escalation. These border incursions match his tactics during the Eastern conflict, small provocations designed to force a disproportionate response." Nathaniel leaned over the map table, his finger tracing the marked locations of recent incidents. "You're certain?" "As certain as I can be without written confirmation. Hargrove believes shifters are abominations that should be eradicated, not negotiated with. He lost family in the midnight raids 30 years ago, and has nursed that hatred ever since." Lord Dominic, who had reluctantly joined our strategy sessions, made a dismissive sound. "So we face one bitter old man? Hardly a threat to the northern territories." "One bitter old man who controls the human military," I corrected, meeting his hostile gaze without flinching. "And who has spent decades building alliances with other council members who share his views." "The Queen speaks wisdom," said a new voice from the doorway. We turned to see an elderly woman enter, her white hair braided with feathers and bones, her eyes clouded with age, but sharp with intelligence. The room immediately shifted, advisors and guards alike straightening in her presence. "Elder Thea," Nathaniel greeted her with surprising deference. "I didn't expect you until tomorrow." The signs couldn't wait, nor could I. She moved to the table with the help of a gnarled staff, her attention focusing on me. "So this is the scarred bride, the prophecy fulfilled." She reached out with weathered fingers, and to my surprise, I found myself allowing her to touch my face, tracing the lines of my scars with gentle pressure. "Prophecy is a tricky thing," she murmured. "Often what we think we understand is merely the shadow of truth, not its substance." She turned back to Nathaniel. "You've waited too long, young king. The wolf grows restless beneath your skin, and your enemies grow bold in your hesitation." A tense silence fell over the room. Lydia's words echoed in my mind. He hasn't shifted since his father died. Nearly a year of denying his wolf nature. I watched as Nathaniel's jaw tightened, the muscle there jumping with suppressed emotion. "My control is my own concern, Elder," he replied stiffly. "Your control affects the entire kingdom," she countered. "An alpha who denies his true nature weakens the pack bonds. The southern territories sense it. The humans exploit it." Her milky eyes turned to me again. "And your queen cannot help you if she doesn't know what she faces." "This isn't the time," Nathaniel began. "If not now, when?" Thea interrupted. "After the southern packs challenge you? After Hargrove's assassins succeed where the Reed boy failed?" She thumped her staff on the stone floor. "You chose a queen marked by wolf claws. The moon has accepted her. Now you must trust her with the truth." With those cryptic words, she hobbled back toward the door. "Tomorrow at moonrise, I will return. Be ready to face what you've avoided, or be prepared to lose everything." She paused, looking back at me. "Both of you." After she departed, an uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. Dominic and the other advisors exchanged glances, clearly hesitant to speak after such an ominous pronouncement. "Continue monitoring the borders," Nathaniel finally ordered, his voice tight. "Double the patrols near the southern pass. If Hargrove is planning a major incursion, that's where he'll strike." He straightened, authority settling over him like a cloak. "Dismissed." The advisors filed out, leaving us alone in the map room. Nathaniel braced his hands on the table, his head bowed, tension radiating from every line of his body. I approached cautiously, placing a hand on his arm. "What was she talking about, Nathaniel? What truth haven't you shared with me?" For a moment, I thought he might brush me off, maintain the distance he'd carefully preserved between us, despite our shared chambers and united public front. Instead, he straightened and took my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles in a gentle caress. "Walk with me," he said quietly. "There's something you need to see." He led me through passages I hadn't explored before, descending deep into the mountain's heart. The air grew warmer, thick with mineral scents, and the sound of rushing water echoed off the stone walls. Finally, we entered a vast cavern, illuminated by glowing crystals embedded in the rock. At its center lay a steaming pool, the water clear enough to reveal smooth stones lining its bottom. "The Heart Spring," Nathaniel explained, his voice reverberating in the cavernous space. "The sacred place where the first shifters made their covenant with the moon." Gaining the ability to change form, I gazed around in wonder, feeling the weight of history and ritual in this ancient place. "It's beautiful. It's also the only place I can speak freely, without fear of being overheard." He released my hand and moved to the edge of the pool, steam rising around him like ghostly sentinels. "What Elder Thea said is true. I haven't shifted since my father died. Since I became king." "Why?" I asked, joining him by the water's edge. "Lydia mentioned it was unusual for an alpha to deny his wolf form for so long." "Unusual and dangerous," he confirmed grimly. "The wolf grows restless, harder to control. The alpha's connection to the pack weakens." "Then why risk it?" He was silent for a long moment, his silver eyes reflecting the glowing crystals. "Because I'm afraid of what will happen when I let the wolf free." The admission clearly cost him, his shoulders tight with tension. I waited, sensing there was more he needed to say. "My father was a great king in many ways," he continued, his voice low, strong, fair, respected. "But as he aged, his control began to slip. The wolf's instincts grew stronger, more dominant, his hands clenched into fists. By the end, he was shifting unpredictably, lashing out at perceived threats. The attack on your village wasn't an isolated incident. It was simply the one that couldn't be hidden or excused. Understanding dawned. You're afraid the same thing will happen to you. It's in our bloodline, he said with quiet intensity. A curse, some call it, though Elder Thea would say it's simply the price of power. Each generation of alpha kings in my family has eventually lost the battle with their wolf. Some sooner, some later, but all eventually succumb. He turned to face me fully. When that happens, tradition demands the alpha be challenged and killed by his successor to preserve the pack's strength. Horror washed over me. You had to kill your own father. Pain flashed across his features. No, after he attacked your village, he recognized what was happening. He retreated to the sacred hunting grounds and took his own life rather than force that burden upon me, his voice roughened with emotion. His last words to me were a warning. The wolf remembers what the man forgets. Never forget who you are. I reached for his hand, feeling the weight of this revelation, the terrible burden he carried. And you've been fighting your nature ever since, trying to prove you can control what he couldn't. At the cost of my strength, apparently. Bitterness edged his words. Elder Thea is right. The southern pack sense my weakness. Lord Dominic chafes under my rule. Even my own guards exchange worried glances when they think I don't notice. And the prophecy? I asked. Where does that fit into all this? He looked down at our joined hands. The complete prophecy speaks of an alpha who will either unite all territories under peaceful rule or destroy everything in blood and fire. The difference lies in his mate, marked by his greatest enemy and his greatest strength. His thumb brushed lightly over my wrist. You bear my father's mark upon your face. But the prophecy is ambiguous. It could mean you'll help me control my wolf nature, or I'll trigger its final emergence. I finished, the implications chilling. That's why Elder Thea said the moon had accepted me. She's waiting to see which way the prophecy unfolds. Nathaniel nodded grimly. Tomorrow at moonrise, she'll perform the binding ritual, an ancient ceremony meant to determine our true path. It's not without risk. What kind of risk? His eyes met mine, their silver depths troubled. If our union is blessed, it will strengthen both of us, creating a bond that even death cannot sever. If it's cursed, he hesitated. The wolf could emerge fully, beyond my control, and you would be its first target. Fear whispered through me, but it was tempered by something else. A growing certainty that I hadn't come this far, survived so much, only to become another victim. Perhaps it was foolish, this budding faith in destiny, but it felt right in a way little else had in my life. I'll face the ritual with you, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. Nathaniel's expression softened with wonder, and something that might have been the beginning of affection. You continue to astonish me. Most would run from such a threat. Running has never saved me before, I replied with a small smile. Besides, where would I go? Back to a human council that wants me silenced? To an academy that sold me to the highest bidder? You could go anywhere, he said quietly. I would provide for you, ensure your safety. I shook my head. I've spent my life being hidden away, deemed too damaged to have value. Here, at least, my scars seem to mean something. I touched the wooden pendant at my throat. My mother told me strength isn't always a roar. Perhaps this is what she meant, finding the courage to stay when every instinct screams to flee. For a moment, we stood in silence, the steam from the sacred pool swirling around us like spirits of the ancient shifters, witnesses to this moment of truth between their descendant and his human queen. Then, slowly, Nathaniel raised a hand to my face, his fingers hovering just above my scarred cheek. May I? He asked, his voice barely audible over the bubbling water. I nodded, my breath catching as his warm palm cupped my face, thumb gently tracing the raised lines of the scars. No one had touched them so deliberately, so tenderly, since the healers had treated my wounds 15 years ago. My father's mark, he murmured, but perhaps also a sign of your strength, your survival against impossible odds. His hand slid to cradle the back of my neck, and he leaned forward until our foreheads touched. Whatever happens tomorrow, know that I chose you not just because of prophecy, but because something in me recognized something in you, a kindred spirit, a survivor. The intimacy of the moment washed over me, more powerful than any physical claiming could have been. We stood at a precipice together, facing threats from without and within, bound by fate, but choosing each other nonetheless. A distant howl echoed through the cavern, a patrol wolf signaling the change of guard, breaking the spell between us. Nathaniel stepped back, though his eyes remained fixed on mine. "We should return," he said, regret coloring his voice. "There are preparations to make before tomorrow." As we ascended from the heart spring, I felt a shifting within myself. Not physical like the transformation Nathaniel feared, but a realignment of purpose. I had come to this kingdom as a purchased bride, a political pawn. I would face tomorrow as a queen by choice, standing beside the man who had seen value in my scars when others saw only damage. And if the wolf emerged, if prophecy turned to tragedy rather than triumph, well, I had survived one wolf attack. Perhaps fate had been preparing me all along to survive another. Or perhaps to prevent it entirely. Dawn broke pale and tentative over the northern territories, as if the sun itself hesitated to witness what the day would bring. I stood at our chamber window, watching as the mountain peaks emerged from darkness, their snow-capped summits catching the first golden light. Behind me, Nathaniel slept fitfully, his powerful frame tense even in repose. We had returned late from meetings with his advisors, preparing contingencies for every possible outcome of tonight's ritual. If the binding succeeded, we would immediately announce our strengthened union, perhaps even demonstrate Nathaniel's renewed control over his wolf form, a display of power to quell dissent among the southern packs. If it failed, I turned from the window, unable to complete the thought. Failure would mean death, either mine at the claws of Nathaniel's unleashed wolf, or his at the hands of Lord Dominic, who would surely challenge a king proven unstable. Either way, war would follow. The human council would seize on the chaos to push their advantage, and the fragile peace between our peoples would shatter. "You're thinking too loudly," Nathaniel's deep voice interrupted my spiraling thoughts. He sat up in bed, dark hair tousled from sleep, silver eyes alert despite the early hour. "I can practically hear your mind working from here." A small smile tugged at my lips. "Just contemplating potential doom, the usual morning routine." He rose and crossed to where I stood, warm hands settling on my shoulders. "Having second thoughts? I wouldn't blame you." I leaned back against him, surprising myself with how natural the gesture felt. In just a few days, we had progressed from wary allies to something not quite definable. Not lovers, but more than mere political partners. Each crisis had drawn us closer, creating trust where suspicion might have flourished. "Not second thoughts," I answered truthfully. "Just preparing myself for whatever comes." His arms slipped around my waist, holding me against the solid warmth of his chest. "We face it together. That's the one certainty I can offer." We remained that way for a moment, watching the sunrise bathe the kingdom in light before the day's demands pulled us apart. Lydia arrived to help me dress, bringing news that Elder Thea had been seen gathering herbs at dawn. "Preparations for the ritual," she whispered, excitement and fear mingling in her voice. The servants knew something momentous would happen tonight, though the details had been kept secret. The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. I met with Eleanor to review security arrangements, ensuring trusted guards would be stationed throughout the palace. Nathaniel convened with military advisors, discussing border reports and positioning troops to respond if the southern packs made their move. We reconvened for a tense midday meal, both picking at food neither of us wanted. "The southern emissary has requested an audience," Nathaniel informed me, pushing away his barely touched plate. "He arrived an hour ago. Will you see him?" "I must. To refuse would be seen as weakness." He reached for my hand across the table. "I want you there." I nodded, though anxiety coiled in my stomach. "Of course." The southern emissary proved to be a striking woman with copper skin and calculating eyes. She bowed with practiced precision before the twin thrones where Nathaniel and I sat, but the gesture held no true deference. "Alpha King Nathaniel, human queen," she greeted us, the slight pause before my title deliberate. "I bring greetings from the Southern Alliance, and concerns." "Speak plainly, Emissary Sarah," Nathaniel commanded, his voice carrying the subtle resonance of alpha authority. "Very well." She straightened, all pretense of diplomacy falling away. The Southern Pacts question the wisdom of a human queen, particularly in these troubled times. They question the strength of a king who has not shifted in nearly a year. Her gaze sharpened. They wonder if the Northern Territories might benefit from new leadership. The threat was unmistakable. I felt Nathaniel tense beside me but kept my expression neutral, remembering my court training from childhood. "Interesting," I replied before Nathaniel could speak, my tone conversational. "I've heard similar concerns from the Human Council about your leadership. They wonder why the Southern Pacts allow a female alpha to dictate policy when tradition calls for male dominance." I tilted my head innocently. Or have I misunderstood the Southern customs? Sarah's eyes widened fractionally. I had guessed correctly about her role in the Southern hierarchy. She recovered quickly, but not before I saw the flash of anger. "You speak boldly for someone so vulnerable," she replied, gaze lingering on my scars. "These marks taught me vulnerability is often mistaken for weakness," I countered. A dangerous assumption in diplomacy. Nathaniel's hand covered mine on the armrest between our thrones. A subtle gesture of support. "The Northern Territories stand united, Emissary Sarah. My queen and I appreciate your concerns, but find them unnecessary. The Southern Alliance would be happy to demonstrate their necessity," she replied smoothly. "A formal challenge could clarify matters of strength and leadership." "A challenge?" I echoed, feigning confusion. "But surely that would violate the Treaty of Silver Falls, which prohibits territory disputes during the winter months?" I smiled slightly. "The Human Council would view such a violation with grave concern. They might even reconsider their current neutrality." It was a bluff. We knew the Human Council was anything but neutral, but Sarah couldn't be certain how much I knew of their plans. Her expression flickered with uncertainty. "The treaty has exceptions for matters of pact stability," she argued, but with less conviction. "Indeed it does," Nathaniel agreed, voice hardening. "Exceptions that require evidence of instability, presented before the Council of Elders." His grip tightened on mine. "Are you prepared to stand before Elder Thea and justify your accusations?" At the mention of Thea's name, Sarah's confidence visibly faltered. The Elder's reputation extended beyond the Northern Territories. Her power was respected, her judgment feared. "Perhaps hasty conclusions have been drawn," Sarah conceded reluctantly. "The Southern Alliance merely wishes to ensure the continued strength of all shifter territories in these uncertain times. A concern we share," Nathaniel replied. "You may inform your alpha that the Northern Territories remain strong and vigilant. Any challenges to that strength will be met decisively." The dismissal was clear. Sarah bowed again, deeper this time, before backing away from the dais. At the door, she paused, eyes meeting mine with unexpected intensity. "The Human Council sent riders 3 days ago," she said quietly. "They travel the Eastern Path. Whatever game you think you're playing, Scarred Queen, know that all pieces are now in motion." With that cryptic warning, she departed, leaving us to exchange troubled glances. "The Eastern Path bypasses our main border checkpoints," Nathaniel observed grimly. "If Hargrove has dispatched forces that way, they could arrive within days," I finished, mind racing. "And if they're coordinating with the Southern Pacts, we're running out of time." He rose, pulling me gently to my feet beside him. "Everything depends on tonight." The hours until moonrise passed in tense preparation. I bathed in water scented with ritual herbs, donned a simple white dress left by Elder Thea, and wove protective symbols into my pale hair as instructed. Nathaniel underwent his own preparations, emerging from his chambers stripped to the waist, ancient runes painted across his chest and back in dark pigment. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the palace grounds, we were escorted separately to the Heart Spring. The cavern had been transformed. Hundreds of candles illuminated the space, their flames reflecting off the surface of the steaming pool. Elder Thea stood at its edge, her white hair loose around her shoulders, her weathered hands clutching a ceremonial bowl. Around the perimeter stood witnesses: Eleanor, Lord Dominic, the captain of the guard, and other members of Nathaniel's inner circle. Their expressions ranged from hopeful to skeptical to openly hostile. The success or failure of tonight's ritual would reshape alliances, determine loyalties, perhaps decide the fate of the kingdom itself. Nathaniel and I approached from opposite sides of the cavern, meeting at the pool's edge where Thea waited. Up close, I could see the bowl contained a thick liquid that gleamed silver in the candlelight. Moonwater, Thea had called it, collected during the last full moon and mixed with sacred herbs and minerals. "The hour has come," the elder announced, her voice stronger than her frail appearance suggested. "Tonight we witness the fulfillment of prophecy, for good or ill." She turned to me first. "Scarred bride, marked by wolf's claw, do you enter this ritual freely, knowing its dangers?" "I do," I answered steadily, feeling the weight of destiny settling around me. She nodded, then faced Nathaniel. "Alpha King, son of wolf's blood, do you submit to the judgment of moon and mate, knowing its price?" "I do," he responded, his deep voice echoing off the cavern walls. "Then kneel before each other in the sacred waters." We obeyed, facing each other across the steaming pool, close enough that our knees nearly touched. Thea dipped her fingers into the silver liquid and drew symbols on my forehead, my palms, and finally, with gentle precision, along the lines of my scars. The liquid burned slightly, leaving a tingling sensation in its wake. "The mark of your enemy," she murmured, transformed to strength. She turned to Nathaniel, repeating the process, symbols on his forehead, his palms, and finally across his heart. "The strength of your blood, tempered by wisdom." Taking both our hands, she joined them over the water's surface. "Now, look into each other's eyes. Do not break this gaze, no matter what you see, no matter what you feel. The truth lies between you, if you have the courage to find it." I locked eyes with Nathaniel, his silver gaze reflecting candlelight, and something deeper. Fear, determination, and beneath it all, a flicker of hope. As Thea began chanting in an ancient language, the air around us seemed to thicken, pressure building in my ears as if we were descending deep underwater. The cavern faded from awareness. The witnesses disappeared from my peripheral vision, until there was only Nathaniel's eyes, growing brighter, more intense. The silver of his irises expanded, consuming the white, then bleeding into the pupil until his entire eye glowed like molten metal. And suddenly, I wasn't looking at Nathaniel anymore. I was looking at the wolf, not his physical form, he hadn't shifted, but something more primal, more elemental, the essence of the beast that lived within the man. It regarded me with ancient intelligence, assessing, judging, deciding my worth. I felt its power, its hunger, its capacity for violence, and beneath it all, its terrible loneliness. "You're afraid," I realized with startling clarity, not speaking aloud, but thinking the words directly to the wolf essence before me. "You fear being caged, being denied, being forgotten." The presence in Nathaniel's eyes shifted, surprise replacing wariness. "You see me?" it seemed to reply, though no words were spoken. "The man denies me, fights me, fears me." "He fears becoming his father," I countered, "losing control, hurting those he protects." The father was weak, divided against himself. "We are stronger together." Understanding bloomed within me. The curse in Nathaniel's bloodline wasn't inevitable madness. It was division. Man and wolf at war, each trying to dominate the other, until the strain shattered them both. You need each other, I realized. Neither complete without the other. The wolf essence seemed to consider this, its presence growing warmer, less threatening. "And you? What do you need, Scarred One?" The question caught me off guard. What did I need? Safety? Acceptance? Power? None seemed entirely right. What had I been seeking all my life, even before the scars marked me as different? "Belonging," I answered finally. "A place where both my strength and weakness are valued, where I'm neither hidden away nor placed on display." Like me, the wolf responded, and I felt its recognition, its kinship. Neither fully accepted nor fully rejected, caught between worlds. Yes, I acknowledged. Like you. Something shifted between us then, a barrier dissolving, a connection forming. I felt warmth spreading from our joined hands, flowing up my arms, suffusing my chest. The wolf in Nathaniel's eyes seemed to smile, its presence no longer frightening but familiar, almost comforting. "We accept you, Scarred One," it communicated. "Both man and wolf, will you accept us?" In that moment, I understood the true nature of the prophecy. I wasn't meant to help Nathaniel control his wolf. I was meant to help him integrate it, to show him that division was the true enemy, not the beast within. "I accept you," I answered, the words feeling like a vow more binding than our wedding ceremony. "Both of you. All of you." Light exploded between us, so bright I would have flinched away if not for Thea's warning to maintain our gaze. Heat seared along my scars, not painful but intense, as if they were being redrawn. Nathaniel's body tensed, a low growl building in his throat, but his eyes, still glowing silver, never left mine. And then, as suddenly as it began, the sensation receded. The cavern came back into focus around us. The witnesses gasped collectively, though I couldn't tell what they were seeing. Thea's voice cut through my disorientation. "It is done," she announced, satisfaction evident in her tone. "Rise, true mates, bound by moon and blood and choice." We stood on shaky legs, still holding hands. I noticed immediately that something had changed. My scars tingled, and when I touched them with my free hand, I found they had transformed. No longer raised white lines, they now shimmered with a faint silver sheen, like trails of stardust across my skin. "What happened?" I whispered to Nathaniel, whose eyes had returned to normal, though they seemed brighter somehow, more alive. Before he could answer, a commotion erupted at the cavern entrance. The captain of the guard burst in, breathing hard. "Your Majesties, human forces have been spotted approaching from the east, and southern pack scouts from the south. They converge on the capital." Lord Dominic stepped forward, hand on his sword hilt. "It's an orchestrated attack. They waited for the ritual, hoping it would weaken you, or knowing it would reveal the truth one way or another," Eleanor added grimly. Nathaniel straightened, and I felt a new energy radiating from him. Power, confidence, wholeness. "How long until they reach the city?" "Hours at most," the captain reported. "We're mobilizing defenses, but we're caught between two forces." Nathaniel turned to me, his silver eyes gleaming with purpose. "It seems our enemies have made their move, my queen. Shall we make ours?" I touched my transformed scars, feeling the bond between us humming with shared strength. "Together," I affirmed. He smiled then, fierce and free in a way I hadn't seen before. "Together." He turned to his gathered advisors, voice ringing with authority. "Prepare for battle, but also for negotiation. Tonight we show both humans and shifters what true unity looks like." As the others rushed to carry out his orders, Nathaniel led me toward the cavern exit, his step lighter despite the looming conflict. "The wolf is calm," he told me quietly, present but not fighting for control. For the first time in my life, I feel whole. The prophecy, I realized. It wasn't about controlling the wolf or unleashing it. It was about harmony, a lesson my father never learned. He agreed soberly. "One I might never have understood without you." He brushed gentle fingers along my silver-traced scars. "You were marked by the father, but you've saved the son." Hours later, we stood together atop the city walls, watching as dual armies approached. Human forces from the east, southern shifters from the south. Nathaniel, now dressed in battle regalia, raised his hand, and a signal fire blazed to life above the main gate. "Are you ready?" he asked, his eyes meeting mine. I nodded, touching the wooden pendant at my throat one last time before removing it and handing it to Lydia for safekeeping. My mother said strength isn't always a roar. Sometimes it's a whisper that outlasts the storm. I smiled up at him. But sometimes it needs to be both. Nathaniel took a deep breath, then let out a roar that shook the very stones beneath our feet. Not human, not entirely wolf, but a perfect blending of both. His body blurred, shifted, transformed in a display of power that left the watching troops awestruck. Where the king had stood, a massive wolf now towered, its coat black as midnight save for a silver streak down its spine. Its eyes, familiar silver, remained fixed on mine. Intelligent and aware, I placed my hand on the wolf's massive head, my silver-traced scars gleaming in the torchlight. Together, we faced the approaching armies, not as alpha and human, not as predator and prey, but as true mates, each made stronger by the other's difference. Below, I could see the advancing forces falter, confusion spreading through their ranks at the unexpected sight. This was not the vulnerable, divided kingdom they had expected to find. This was something new, something neither human council nor southern pacts had prepared for. "Let them come," I said softly, feeling Nathaniel's agreement through our bond. "We're ready." And as the wolf beside me threw back its head in another triumphant howl, I knew with bone-deep certainty that we were. Whatever challenges approached, war, peace, or something in between, we would face them together, no longer defined by our scars, but transformed by them. The unwanted bride and the divided king, now united as something greater than either could have been alone.